This is an Audio Wool original.
It is Frightday. I'm your host, Byron. We're broadcasting live from our kind of chilly little compound in the woods of Montana. Bodies, bullets, and holes caused by them. This week, it's physical evidence and testimony to support what some may have tried to obscure as we continue our journey investigating the assassination of RFK. This is part 3. I'm joined today by Kelly.
Hey, everybody.
In this week's edition of Kelly's Cryptids and Kennedys. Sam can't make it because he's being with
he's off in the woods testing
great.
guns.
There we go. That's also cool. Very nice. I don't have a lot of housekeeping up front today.
No.
Yeah, I don't have any phone calls that, well, I mean, they would be distracting at this point, but
I mean, in all fairness, I made you clip 117 different things, so there wasn't much time for anything else in the way of housekeeping.
Yeah. I will point out, shop.frightday.com, we still have this lovely little Assassination of RFK t-shirt available. Shipping now.
Goo.
Yeah, I want to check that out. It's
Goo.
It's kind of fun.
Goo.
Take a peek. But yeah, Kelly, I mean, I don't know, holiday season, we're rolling into it. I'm gone next week, but I don't believe that we're going to miss any uploads. There should be a special treat for the folks.
There is.
In the feed.
Turkey Day's real late this year.
Is it late in the season? I don't know when
it is late. So, because Thanksgiving isn't even next week, it's the week after. It's
so we
crazy.
actually have some time. We could skip next week and just play something else.
I mean, I could just get on live and talk about this for a really long time.
Sounds like a bad idea.
I have so much to talk about with this.
Yeah,
You're never going to let me say it all.
You don't think so?
No, I don't. Unfortunately.
I mean, maybe it would be a good idea for us to, jump right into it if that's the case. Kelly, I'm passing the board to you after I push this button.
Oh my gosh, how scary is that?
Fun, and then this button.
Kelly's Cryptids.
You guys, I get to press buttons today. Just trying to infuse a little bit of joy into the scenario. It's a little bit,
yeah?
Yeah, it's a little bit sad. We've been in the doldrums with this story, and I'm not going to lie and say that tonight's going to be any more uplifting, but
considering the clips I had to pull, I got to tell you,
it wasn't very happy,
it's not a lot of fun stuff.
No. However, knowledge is power, and if anybody's been paying attention to wider news stories, there was a large lawsuit filed by 3 of Malcolm X's children this week.
I didn't know that.
Against the FBI, CIA, and I believe one other entity within the U.S. government.
Is this COINTELPRO backlash?
They're alleging that they actually killed their father.
Fully assassinated their father.
Yeah.
Huh.
And I have not obviously read all of the information yet. Most of it isn't. So
I did a typo here. I typed in MFK instead of LK, and it said
it's actually Malcolm X.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Pardon me.
Yep, that's okay.
So it's a Sunday, guys.
That's all right. Fine. So, but so far, what's been discussed, a lot of the similar things to what we're talking about in the story surrounding RFK. Though, of course, there was the added significant layer of him being a person of color, which arguably pieces of our government liked even less than they liked Kennedy's. So, just interesting. I think hopefully we'll talk about that at some point. My kiddos are very anxious for me to investigate Malcolm X.
We have never
unfairly assassinated.
Really, have we?
Yeah. It is interesting. Malcolm X is one of those things that I feel hesitant to cross into because I am not informed enough to speak intelligently about him. But no, I'll work on getting there. Anyhow, there was a lot of horrific violence that happened in the 1960s, continues to happen today. But since he's going to be the focus of our discussion again, let's just hear some words on that idea from RFK himself.
No one, no matter where he lives or what he does, can be certain who next will suffer from some senseless act of bloodshed. And yet it goes on and on and on in this country of ours. Why?
Apologies, everybody. I've got headphone difficulty. So Byron's letting me
Use those headphones.
listen.
Take your headphones.
Really? Okay. Hold on 1 second, everybody. One would hope that our country had advanced to a better place in the last, handful of decades, and that his words weren't as true. But unfortunately, I think they might even be more true than they were then. It's interesting to hear that coming from him. And again, just to put us in the place that we are going to be discussing all night, I think it's worthwhile to hear a little bit of audio. This is actually from a live report recorded by Jeff Brent, who was a reporter on the scene on the night of the assassination. You will hear a little bit of Ethel even in the background asking people to leave she and her husband alone. It was interesting, the story we talked about earlier, the young kid who was taking photos and then had his photos confiscated.
Yeah, what was his name?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Aaron.
I knew you were going to do that to me.
Of course I would. Don't worry about it.
Euchert.
Yes.
We'll talk about him a little bit more tonight.
Yeah.
But the way he told the story, he was taking these photos. He took a photo, RFK dropped in front of him. He kept taking the photos. He jumped up on a table, was shooting down and taking the photos. And then Ethel came in and said, will everybody please just leave us alone? And that's when he was like, yeah, I can't take any more photos. I feel like an asshole.
Even though he snuck in there.
Yeah. So let's listen to that.
Ladies and gentlemen, Kennedy has been shot. They think Kennedy has been shot. It appeared to be gunshot. It seems like Robert Kennedy has been shot in a little room off to the side. I was near the senator. We heard what appeared to be gunshot coming from inside this room in here. It was mass chaos. You heard it as it happened. We don't know what has happened. It's mass chaos. Oh, someone else was shot. Someone else was shot. We have another person who was next to Kennedy who was shot in the forehead.
So obviously horrific. It's kind of weird how we've become so jaded to things like this, but for some reason the audio of this, even probably because I've been living in this for a long time, I feel a little bit like you with your serial killers right now.
What do you mean?
Just
like certain, like deeply fucked, or?
Yeah, well, just like so much in that headspace that it's really hard to think about anything without that lens on at this point. It was a rough time. Was this a senseless killing, like one of the bits of violence that Bobby spoke about? I don't know. Hard to say, but was the investigation of what happened skillful enough to even answer that question one way or another? Well, there are some very divided opinions on that. Some people would say, yes, the investigation was incredibly skillful, and we can draw very clear conclusions from the investigation that happened in 1968. Some of those people are going to be the legal players in this case. And so Byron has a bit of a map. I wish that I had made a more presentable version for everybody else, but try and stay with me here. We've got the district attorney, a gentleman by the name of Younger, okay? He was the DA during the trial of Sirhan. And then there was the DA that took over after him, who ended up being in office while this case was reinvestigated. So we've got Younger, who's the DA during the trial, and then we've got Bush, who is the DA afterwards. We've got the chief of police, Edward Davis, and he actually took over right after the trial of Sirhan. So technically this did not happen on his watch, though he is really willing to go to bat over what happened before his watch in the Los Angeles Police Department.
I'm sure he had access to a lot of files.
Oh, I'm sure he
information
did.
You would imagine,
You know,
right?
like some of the files that resulted in lots of Supreme Court cases about the horrific abuses committed by Los Angeles Police Department, arguably the worst of any in our country. But then we've got Chief of Detectives different from the chief of police. So underneath the police, we've got,
I wonder if this is LA specific or like a metropolitan
like
structure.
I think it's probably similar in like big cities, though I don't know for sure. So Houghton, 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 Robert Houghton, he comes up a little bit.
Don't know why I did that.
That's okay. We can do it. Do you want to do a movie recommendation? We can do a movie
honestly,
recommendation.
I did go see Anora last night. It's pretty good.
I didn't hear anything about Heretic either.
It's great.
Is it?
Also great. I saw that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good to know.
Sorry for pushing that button though.
It's all right. We've got the ballistics, and I'm using quotation marks and really big melodramatic fingers right now.
How they can see it if you're watching live at live.frightday.com or watching the video at youtube.com/frightday.
Thanks, everybody. That's Dwayne Wolfer. You're going to hear about him. And then Ted Chirac, who was an investigator, and you're going to hear a lot about him tonight as well. Okay, so we've got 2 DAs, 1 chief of police, 1 chief of detectives, a really bad ballistics expert. Sorry, that isn't even...
You're leaning real heavy into
that isn't even subjective at this point. Wait until you guys hear it. And then Ted Chirac, a investigative journalist. So as we forge ahead, let's hear from some of the people who would say, yeah, this was a pretty kick-ass investigation that happened in 1968.
I said that when we first started this investigation, you were a little girl at the time, but I said that we've interviewed 4,000 people, and we've done it because someday somebody, for purposes best known to themselves, regardless of the evidence, is going to try to prove that Sirhan didn't do it, that this was a conspiracy, that this is some big mysterious plan that in spite of all the investigation we haven't been able to uncover. We knew it would happen.
So that wonderful, very not condescending gentleman was being interviewed by a woman named Nikki Pierce. Bless her heart for not punching him in the nose and actually continuing the the interview.
She was just a little thing, knee-high to a...
Which was absurd because this interview was conducted with Younger, so the DA who prosecuted the case.
Are you saying Younger was older?
Younger was older,
Okay.
but Younger loved to talk about the female reporter being younger. He talks about it as though this happened decades ago. That interview was conducted in either 1971 or 72. So 2 to 3 years. And this woman's like in her 20s. She wasn't a little girl. And just thinking about what...
She wasn't like a Doogie Howser.
Oh my God.
Of journalism.
There's a lot of film you can see out there of bits and pieces of this interview that she conducted if you look it up on YouTube. But she has the patience of a saint, and it really makes me feel whiny when I complain about condescending asshole men these days, because what people had to put up with then was just 1,000 times worse. Oh my God.
So there's a little bit of progress.
There is. I would say, yeah, we are. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's at least better than it used to be. There is also a bit of input from Edward Davis, again, the police chief, who was not there was not the chief, I should say, during the actual investigation, but was the chief when the reinvestigation of the assassination happened in the early 70s.
Now, this was obviously an open and shut case right from the beginning with all of the witnesses and the physical evidence, and I don't think it probably could have been handled in any better fashion than it really was.
So put a pin in that thought, everybody, because we are going to return to that. It's often a criticism of people involved with any type of investigation, either official or, say like an investigative journalist for a case like this, that they're just trying to make money. They're trying to make a buck. People who have done podcasts on this topic, wink, wink, people who've written books, lots of folks have been accused of trying to profit off of this tragedy. And I am sure that there are people who have gone in with that intention. However, I don't think it's nearly as common as people would say. It's one of those very emotional, grabbing statements that you can make to try to discredit someone else. Interestingly, Davis makes that statement.
Shop.frightday.com.
Right. Well, there you go. See, Byron's going to make a buck, but I'm gonna hold my ground.
Oh.
We knew that books would be written. We knew that people would try to become famous or make a fortune on the basis of some new and varied theory as to what happened in the Sirhan case.
And there are many authors and of theories and authors of books, and there are still people trying to get rich over the tragedy of the Kennedys.
So that was both Younger and Davis weighing in on how disgusting that was, that people would want to do that. Nothing, Byron, that I love more than an irony. By the way, I was very proud of Puckwudgie this week. She actually was able to state a real ironic situation, not like Alanis Morissette style.
Version, yeah.
Yeah, I was very proud.
Thinking about you, David Coulier, by the way. Even though they did have a bad relationship, it sounds.
Wait, did he die?
He's cancer.
Oh, fuck,
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they did have a really bad
I was
relationship.
going to
though
say,
it
yeah,
resulted
wasn't there like an
I
underage
think
thing? So I apologize for
I
bringing
thank
that
him
up
because
in
the Rage
context of-
breakup song that he inspired helped me through a number of breakups.
That's good.
It was a great Rage breakup song.
Yeah.
Love that song.
Didn't mean to bring him up in the context.
Sorry about it. That's real sad.
It is sad.
So back to the irony, though. Remember,
Yeah.
that's where we started.
Well, that's kind of ironic.
It is ironic.
Okay.
That is all those ironies. Here's some irony again.
And there are many authors and of theories and authors of books, and there are still people trying to get rich over the tragedy of the Kennedys.
Ironically, the first detailed book on the assassination, Special Unit Senator, was written by the man responsible for the official investigation, Robert A. Houghton, Chief of Detectives, Los Angeles Police Department. Quote, for the sole purpose of acquainting the American public with the facts of the investigation and with the evidence, unquote.
So that's funny. Isn't that funny?
mean, yeah.
It's like funny ha-ha.
Who is best to do it, though?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm going to let you make that call at the end of our discussion tonight about what exactly happened with that investigation. Because you see, there was a gentleman who happened to be in the pantry that night as well. Byron, are you familiar with Hamilton?
No.
Okay. I have had this song running through my head constantly during this episode's preparation. Specifically, the room that it happened is one of the most notable songs from the Hamilton soundtrack. Yeah. And Creature sings it at least 3 times a day in our household. So that kept running in my head because Ted Chirac was indeed in the room that it happened. He was a radio and TV journalist, would become a producer, and he was in the room, though not as close as some of the other people. He became fascinated by what happened because his experience of the events, along with the experience of the people he knew who were in the vicinity, was so different from the official report that he really began digging into this, eventually making a film that would present lots of interviews and firsthand accounts, and even analyzed a lot of the evidence while some of it was still around. So that's who we're getting a decent chunk of our information from tonight. This movie called The Second Gun, which I do think anybody who is interested in this, it's a worthwhile film. I was listening to somebody talk about when they saw it in the movie theater in 1973.
Wait, this was a theatrical release?
Yeah, it actually went to the theaters in 1973, and I was very jealous of the fact that I couldn't experience it in that setting.
Wow.
It'd be so cool.
Yeah, they don't, well, I was going to say they don't release things like this in theaters anymore.
Well,
they kind of do sometimes.
Sometimes AMC plays some really fun things that are like maybe.
This is like the 2000 Mules of
Well, but like
1973.
that. Let's maybe not compare the two. The world's a different place, Byron.
I really should have just done it because it was screening at that mega church, and I had COVID-19, and I was like really close to just.
Well, I cannot believe that you didn't
actually
do that.
Is that illegal for me to say that it was?
No,
I think you can't actively transmit. Well,
no, you could have worn a mask.
I guess that's true.
I mean, you might have gotten jumped for wearing a mask in that crowd, but
yeah,
like,
and then they would have gotten ill, and that's their fault.
Okay, but see, now I'm doing the thing that I swore I wasn't going to do after this election.
it's
I'm not going to
really
I'm going to build bridges. Damn it. Went to a very inspirational hip hop show last week that convinced me I need to build bridges.
How was the Atmosphere show? Good?
It was Brother Ali, actually.
Oh.
It was, though it did have Ant from Atmosphere.
From Atmosphere, okay.
Not Slug, though, just Ant. It was great. It was phenomenal, and Creature ended up on stage again. She officially has no idea how a concert works now.
Yeah, it's quit.
She doesn't understand how concerts work.
How did she ask?
No, she was literally jamming so hard in the audience.
See, that's the problem. Is you need to tell her to have just a touch of
I'm
respect
are you
for
kidding
other
me?
people's experience.
Are you kidding me? I'm never going to stop. This girl lives with such a beautiful, shameless existence. I'm not going to stop that. The world will squish it out of her soon enough.
Yeah.
I can't squish it out of her. But yeah, he's not Brother Ali, but the opener saw her and called her up, and they talked for a while, and then she got to dance on stage with him for a while. It was pretty hilarious. Lots of love. Anyhow, I'm not going to other because the spirit of that was not othering.
Space
Where do you
Soul Boy
start?
says, how do concerts work? I'll explain it another time.
Yeah. I mean,
Maybe for Casual Frightday, I'll explain proper concert etiquette.
yeah. Unfortunately, my child just thinks that you always get up on the
You
stage.
get to do whatever you
because
want, and
that
people
has happened so frequently to her, and
I mean, I do support that. I think that's sweet, but I am concerned about.
she emits a lot of love. She also knows the lyrics to everything and makes lots of eye contact.
Yeah.
So I'm heard that I'm told that it's a performer's dream because they're to have people in the audience like that.
I was a musician for a very long time. I didn't like it when people loudly sang along because I'm the one performing.
Okay, well, again, I think this might be. I have the conversation with Sam a lot. I feel like this might be one of those instances where you need to go, okay, that's my experience, which probably means most people's experience is the opposite.
All right.
It's like I have to do with my directions.
Great.
Yeah. Anyhow,
I'm glad that happened. That's wonderful.
it was really funny.
Sounds like a nice moment.
I'll have to. We'll on a.
Normie Roundup?
Yep, on one of those. I'll have to give the whole story. It was adorable. Where do you start with an investigation of a shooting? Well, I'll tell you where you start. You start with the bullets.
Okay.
And you guys, I learned so much about bullets. Sam was the happiest I've seen him since the birth of our children, explaining to me all of the ins and outs of bullets. But
did he pull out bullets?
Oh, yeah. I got all sorts of different bullets. And we talked about powder grains. We talked about manuals that are used to standardize what goes into a bullet. We talked about solid bullets being cheaper versus bullets with different casings being more expensive. We talked about Starfire ammunition, which was this specific kind of ammunition.
I don't know anything about that. Can't wait to learn.
So much stuff. And all of it began when Sirhan bought the bullets. So wouldn't you think, Byron, that the purchase of the bullets ostensibly used in a murder of an elected official running for even higher office would be an important piece of the investigation?
I mean, typically that's where people are busted in like shows like The First 48, right? They're like, oh, we've clear evidence of this person purchasing something premeditated.
Right. Like that would be clear, right? And do you think it would be important to note who purchased it?
Oh yeah, probably.
Probably important.
Probably pretty important.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's hear this.
I gave a statement to the FBI and the Los Angeles Police Department that Sirhan and two others had been in here about 6 weeks before. That they asked for some 357 armor-piercing tank ammo. We didn't have it for sale.
That's right. And they didn't even want her to testify because she wouldn't change her story.
Their former clerk, Larry Arnott, who actually made the sale, was impeached when he testified that Sirhan was with two other men.
Like the Arnott testimony, asking him if he sold the ammunition, and he said yes, and then they said he failed a lie detector test, and they have him identify the sales slip. And the sales slip definitely proves the fact that he was telling the truth, and then they say the lie detector says he said he was telling a lie.
So this is kind of interesting. Ben and Donna were the two people we were hearing from in that interview, and they own
the gun shop.
The gun shop
Yeah.
where Sirhan and two others, very important there, bought the gun or bought the ammunition.
Did they ever explicitly say who the other people were?
Nobody knew who the other people were.
Oh.
Okay, and that was kind of a key element here because those two people, it seems, would be very important to identify in this case.
They're at least witnesses and potentially accomplices.
Bingo.
Okay.
See, Byron, there you go. Thinking
I'm
like
not
an
supposed
actual
to-
investigator.
I
I love
gotta
it.
go. I
That
gotta
was
get
great.
out of here. Yeah.
So it does seem very strange. Two things here. Number one, this is an interesting example of perhaps why lie detector tests aren't used much anymore. There was actually paper evidence along with Donna, who was in the store at the same time when her employee, Larry Arnott, sold the ammunition to these three fellers. Okay. And
What do you mean by paper evidence?
there's a receipt, a sales slip that shows who purchased it, when it was purchased, and it is proving exactly what Arnott testified to. However, because part of his testimony did not line up with whatever official story had been developed at this time, he was a witness for, he was impeached by the side that he was actually testifying in support of during the trial.
Because the
which
evidence
is
was
super weird.
It wasn't valuable.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was very, very strange because this sales slip shows that there were 3 people there.
How does that work?
I think it must have been something to do with the registration, like tracking of ammunition sales.
Sure.
Keep in mind, it is California. They've had like
stricter rules
right,
for a long
like
time.
the 60s were less strict with guns than they are now, but definitely more strict in California than they would have been in other places. That's been pretty consistent. As you could hear from those 2, they tried to get the information to the LAPD. They gave interviews and it wasn't used in any of the evidence, which, just circling back, the photos that were confiscated, those famous may have shown something important photos taken by that young journalist, he was told that they were confiscated because they were going to be used in the trial, and yet they were never used. They were never introduced into evidence. They were never used, period. So we've got a couple of things that those 2 alone, even if there had been nothing else, those 2 alone, pretty important components of an investigation that were not used at all. Okay, so the purchase of what just happened?
I just was trying to search something. I made a computer noise.
You made a noise?
Yeah, sorry.
You made it, okay. So the weapon, or pardon me, the ammunition used and photos perhaps of the actual murder, both of them not used. All right. That alone, Byron, I feel like puts us in a position where we can't determine, and you've been very good about reminding me of this. We can't say, well, that means that LAPD was intending, it was a conspiracy. They were trying to prove something else, or they were trying to cover it up. Okay.
It just meant that they were
either shitty at their job.
It's railroading, but like it doesn't mean that he didn't do it.
We can't gather intent from any of this, right? We can't gather why, or even if they were intentionally fucking up the case this bad. They could have been just this bad as an investigating entity.
Possible.
I don't know. It's possible. Yeah. Or they could have been intentionally fucking it up for all sorts of other reasons. We can't say it's because, I don't know, the FBI told them to, or the CIA told them to, or, I don't know, the mafia said, if you don't cover this up, you're screwed.
Yeah.
Could have been anything. We don't know what. But I think it is safe to say it is not the flawless investigation that Chief of Police Davis wanted us to believe it was. I think that, would you say that's pretty fair?
I feel like
that's
fair.
Pretty fair.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, no intent assumed, but there was also a witness shortly after this, okay? A gentleman who was going for a walk in the woods with his son and came upon 3 people illegally firing a gun at targets. These people, this gentleman and his son, were kind of shaken by the incident because the man who it turned out was almost certainly Sirhan didn't say a word to them, and he was the one that was shooting the gun at targets at that moment and seemed very strange and distant. The other 2 gentlemen, the other 2 people, 1 woman, 1 man,
sure,
came up to this guy and his son and essentially told him to get the hell out of there. Were very weird. The guy and his son skedaddled, and then when they saw Sirhan's picture on the news after the assassination, immediately contacted LAPD. LAPD wanted nothing to do with the story that they were sharing. So again, kind of like the gun store owners attempted to share their witness testimony, communicated with detectives repeatedly. Their statements were disregarded.
But what if this father was like a Ned Flanders type? He's just kind of
I wish he was.
Like you guys shouldn't be doing that kind of
This is one of those things that I had a bunch of stuff on and we're not going to have time to get into, but
he wasn't like
he
that.
wasn't.
Okay.
He wasn't. But
well,
we can
then.
talk more about it in a behind the screams maybe because
sure.
he was it was an interesting story.
We'll add it to the evidence list, the further explanation.
Fair.
Yeah.
Very fair. And we also, if you go through an entire itemization of all of the people whose witness statements were taken versus those who were used, okay? Byron, you've heard the story about the girl with the polka dot dress.
I don't know if I know the story, but I've definitely heard the
So there were people, including a couple of very specific witnesses, who talked about seeing on the night of the assassination, and some even during the day of the assassination.
We definitely talked about this in like episode 2.
Okay, well, perhaps.
Briefly.
They saw Sirhan with this woman.
Yep.
Okay. And most people described it as he was almost following her around like a little puppy dog, right? Like, I don't know. Really was hoping that something was going to happen for him.
He's wanted
with this
some
lady.
attention from her. Yeah.
And one of the most famous interviews involving the girl with the polka dot dress was an eyewitness. Oh, there we go. Oh, I don't even know about that.
No one sees this yet.
I'm sorry. Okay, sorry. Byron just searched up. There's a book called The Girl in the Polka Dot Dress. Sorry, I get really distracted and I'm like, wait a second.
Handle the multi.
What the hell is going on over there?
System that we got going on here.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
You're okay.
There was there were a number of people, but one woman in particular who I think, Byron, we haven't played the audio of this to the best of my knowledge, but there was an interrogation of a witness, which I just want to emphasize that phrase alone a couple of times. Typically, witnesses don't get locked in a room with lights, shining on their face for multiple hours getting interrogated about what they saw.
I would say typically not.
Unless they are known to be, confrontational, or they have a record, or there's some reason that, anyhow, this woman was really bullied by the police. I know that sounds like a subjective statement. Once we get to actually playing the audio of that next time, you're, I think, probably going to agree with me, B. But it's not as though she stood alone. There were 62 witnesses who saw Sirhan with a woman in a polka dot dress. Now, eyewitness testimony, we have all agreed, is certainly not something to be relied upon alone, except for in very extenuating circumstances. But 62 people saying they saw this woman, combined with the fact that the night of the assassination, there was an all points bulletin out for an additional person involved in the case.
What do you mean by that? Is this like Sandy Hook second shooter?
Oh, I don't know that story. I mean, I know what Sandy Hook was.
Yeah, the same with the Vegas shooter. Oftentimes they do say potential second shooter, which is
right.
I don't know why, but
totally true. And I think always better safe than sorry. But this wasn't even the way that it was phrased was not potential.
It was
second. It was second. Second suspect, not even potential. Second suspect is still at large, and literally 62 people saying they saw Sirhan with this woman. One of those witnesses saying this woman, along with another man, came down the stairs outside immediately following the assassination and said, "We got him." And when the woman said, "Got who?" she said, "Bobby Kennedy. We got him." Okay, so there are multiple people that heard those two say that phrase, and there's 62 people that saw Sirhan with this woman in the polka dot dress, and yet there was extensive work done to discredit the notion of a woman in a polka dot dress, to the point that they brought in a witness, or they brought in somebody to court wearing a polka dot dress that was the wrong color polka dots, who happened to be in crutches, and she was a volunteer with Kennedy's campaign. And they tried to say, oh, look, she was there at one point in the day. This is who people must have seen. Everybody who reported seeing the girl in the polka dot dress says there's no way in hell that's who it was. There's some very uncomfortable comments about how well-shaped the woman in the polka dot dress was.
Sure.
Really weird. It is like a very oddly recurring detail that she
back then you could only identify women by butt and breast.
Yeah, and apparently she had great sets because that's all people wanted to mention about her. But it was not the woman who they brought into the courtroom. So when we are looking at what exactly happened there, because we have other people involved, according to multiple witnesses, and none of those people ever came forward, and the LAPD refused to investigate who they might be, the risk of another violent attack by this potentially rogue group, right, or even terrorist group would have been crazy high. Whether they were involved in the assassination or not, they knew more about Sirhan's chosen murdering skill, right, because there were people with him when he bought the bullets. There were people seen with him firing a gun in the middle of the woods. There were people seen with him on the day of the assassination in the location of the assassination. Not following up on those seems like a pretty egregious dismissal of public safety. Okay?
I guess that's fair. I would be curious to know just how much was on the table that they needed to address and what they would be prioritizing. I mean, you say 60-some people witnessed this person?
62 people.
How many people were at the event? It's not a huge place.
Well, no, of the people who were in the pantry, I think it was, they said, that younger guy said they interviewed over 4,000 people. Sure. Those weren't all people that were at the event, clearly.
Some people outside probably, right?
Well, and people that were involved in some other way, right? True. Like people who knew Sirhan from other areas of their life or whatever.
Associated folks.
Sirhan's family was all interviewed, right? None of them were there. So I think, I don't know the exact number of people who were in attendance that were interviewed, but 62 is a pretty difficult number to refute, especially when a lot of those interviews occurred immediately after the event, and there were so many similarities between what was being reported. It's a different, they talk about if people get together and you can, not intentionally, but unintentionally fill in your memory with, oh, that must have been what I saw because this person saw the exact same thing. But a lot of that testimony was collected so immediately that doesn't work either. Yeah. 62 is just a lot to argue against.
Yeah.
And this actually, when it comes to it being a not perfect investigation, this might be the most crazy detail of all. According to documentation in the LA Police Department, Byron, 3 weeks before the trial of Sirhan began, 3 weeks before, there were thousands of photos and documents from this case file destroyed in a hospital incinerator under the watch of 2 police officers.
As a mistake, of course, right?
Was never stated as such.
Huh.
Was stated that the material wasn't needed.
I'm sure they did have a lot of material, though, right? Like, it's a pretty big case.
I'm sure they did. But I think anybody who has ever watched an episode of Law and Order, taken a single law class.
Well, but they don't show what people do, the mundane tasks.
So I will say that it is illegal to destroy any evidence involving a pending investigation or active trial.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so for thousands of documents to be destroyed 3 weeks before the trial begins, again, I can't say what the intent was, but it's hard to believe that was accidental.
Yeah, well, but sometimes this feels a little like Hillary's emails or something. That's like, it may matter, but it probably didn't, Like,
Hillary's emails were not literally the sole purpose of her job. Like, so
sure, I guess, yeah, the evidence is a major part of the investigation.
Well, that is what you're looking for in an investigation. Your entire job as a detective arm of a police department is to gather evidence. And then when you destroy thousands of pages of it right before a trial.
Sure. Okay, fine.
Yeah, it's like they had one job.
Yeah, but they still did the job, supposedly.
So again, we talked about people whose testimonies were never fully recorded, who were arguably, and keep in mind, I'm just using little grabs because there are so many examples of this. Yeah. We could talk for 10 years about it, but pretty bad. pretty bad. And I know that there's a lot of public criticism of police officers in our country at this point, which, you know, again, not even worth getting into because I will end up on that side quest for the rest of the night. But holy shit, this is pretty bad. It's pretty bad. The idea that there was such surprise when people questioned the findings or lack thereof, pretty rough. So we still aren't through this hard evidence that we're going to be discussing tonight, though, Byron, and that's maybe one of the scariest things. What I want to say is we have bullet holes in victims.
Okay.
We have bullet holes in the room. We have witness testimony.
Okay.
We have bullets recovered, and we have guns recovered. Okay, so all of these, the witness testimony is corroborating, but all of those other things are pretty hard and fast evidence. Like, you know, it's not as much, it's not really wishy-washy subjective material. Now, some of those pieces of evidence have questions about what they could mean, and we're going to get into that. But I think it's important to remember we're working on a foundation of a very objectively flawed case. And now we're going to say, okay, well, Sirhan was convicted as being the only assassin and the person whose bullets penetrated and killed Robert F. Kennedy. I don't know anybody who's arguing that Sirhan wasn't present. I don't know anybody who's arguing that Sirhan didn't step out from the crowd and shoot a gun at Robert F. Kennedy. What we are trying to understand is, was there another gun fired at that time? And is there any evidence to support that there was another gun fired? Okay.
The second gun. Like the name
The second gun.
Like the name of the movie.
Right. So, couple things that we know for sure. Sirhan's gun had 8 rounds. It could only hold 8 rounds. So it may have had fewer bullets in it than 8, but we're going to assume it had 8 and that it was full, okay? But that is the most that he could have had. Before you ask, no, there was no time to reload. There was not a single witness testified that he reloaded. Whoever's distracting Byron needs to stop it because I'm going to lose him.
No, AB's saying some very important stuff about,
then I want to hear
about the LAPD in the 1960s and how...
Are we defending the LAPD? I know that we're not. I was just going to say, I think that it's maybe the best argument for complete police reform is looking at the LAPD in the 1960s.
I just wanted to acknowledge the important things that he was saying about, especially towards targeting folks of color. And, horrific.
Yeah. And... there was actually an injunction that blocked a Supreme Court case where they were going to, essentially the decision was going to be that they had to suspend the practice of this specific chokehold that had killed like dozens of people.
Yeah.
And there was an injunction stopping that from happening. So these are the...
Because we got to choke people.
Clearly.
Clearly have to choke these
especially if they're people of color.
Of course.
Right. And keep it, again, like put yourself in the mindset of RFK went into the neighborhoods that the LAPD at this point was trying to make everyone in Middle America believe were dangerous and horrific.
Yeah, the places they were kind of refusing to police.
He went in without any security, did not feel a need to have any security. It's not like he felt really brave going in there. Like, no, he went in because they were Americans. Yeah. And in many cases... a lot of people in those areas, this was one of the first times they had been treated like human beings by a person in a position of authority in a fairly terrifyingly broken governmental system. So when I get really despondent about the recent election results, I keep returning to that thought, like, holy shit, it can't be as bad as what those people felt in that time. Like, anyhow.
Yeah.
And I want you to, the idea of the horrific difference in treatment by people of color. I actually think I had planned on playing this later in the show, but I think AB brings up a really good point, and I actually think right now is probably a worthwhile time to play this clip.
You think? Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah. Let me give just a little bit of background. So again, Byron, we're talking about, was there another gun? Were there additional bullets? Sirhan's gun held 8 bullets. There could not be more than 8 bullets.
Unless you're in a John Wick movie or something.
Which would be super cool.
Yeah.
But I don't think anybody argued that Sirhan had John Wick-like gun skills.
I don't think so.
No, I don't think that happened. So I'm going to do a really quick walkthrough of the bullets, and then we're going to listen to somebody else who was there who has some fairly distinct feelings about people of color. And then we're going to discuss why his words have any bearing on the potential answers to our question about whether there was another gun that was being fired that night. So, 8 bullets. Here are the bullets that we know with absolute certainty were fired and recovered. Okay? Robert F. Kennedy was struck 4 times. Okay? So, he was struck behind the right ear, and this bullet was fired at a range of no more than 3 inches from the back of his right ear.
This is like Steve Buscemi in Fargo?
I just remember the wood chipper.
Okay.
Where did he shoot somebody that close to?
No, he got shot in the face too.
Oh, well, it was behind.
Well, yeah, no, I know.
Right, okay. Yeah. So, and they were able to ascertain this, and Thomas Noguchi, the coroner for this case, was able to very clearly ascertain this based on the extensive powder burns that were behind his ear. Okay. We also have the rest of his report, which I don't know anybody who's listened to RFK Jr. talk about his father's assassination. He talks about Noguchi's autopsy being the perfect autopsy. He did an interview with Bill Maher where he said that like 3 times. It was the perfect autopsy. It's known as the perfect autopsy. I don't know that that's a thing.
Anytime you're saying it's a perfect autopsy or a perfect call.
Or a perfect anything, honestly. It's not really a thing, but it was a very solid autopsy that went through a lot of scrutiny and stood up to all of that scrutiny. Noguchi's one hell of an interesting character on his own, and we are going to do a behind the screens because he was coroner to so many insanely famous cases during this period in LA. But the gun had to have been very close to Robert F. Kennedy's back of his ear when he was shot. Okay, so maximum 3 inches. That lodged in his brain, and that was the gun, or that was the bullet that killed him.
Sure.
Okay.
And that was the first. Well,
we don't know we can't. Unfortunately, I have not. Some people will argue they know the order in which they were shot. I have not been convinced that you could determine that from
unless you had witnesses that explained it explicitly. But.
And the witness, it was so chaotic in that moment. Like, I don't think that that's even realistic. You know what I mean? Like, there's way too much going on. So we have one bullet that hits him in the back of the ear. We have a second bullet that goes in right underneath kind of like his armpit.
Sure.
Okay. And goes in through his right front chest. Okay. And exits through his right front chest. We have another bullet that is right below, so kind of entry at this, just a little bit above that, but slightly different angle.
Sure.
So it goes into the top of the right shoulder.
So it might have gotten knocked or something.
And then another one that passed through the right shoulder pad. Okay, so like it went through, so everything came from like
behind him on his
if you were
right.
to exactly. Okay. And we're going to show some images and little video that actually does a great job. It's funny because all of the different reenactments that I've seen, the best ones by far came from this 1973 video. Yeah. Sam was actually very enthusiastic about their funny, they almost look like paper doll cutouts that they stood side by side.
It does seem like that, yeah.
But it was very, very effective. All right. So, it's funny because I really am just very passionate about what AB said. And so now I'm feeling like I should go in a different order, but I think I'm going to just need to stay in the order that I was. Otherwise,
we'll get to it, of course.
We will get to it. And it is really, really important. All right. So now that we know that, let's think about this a little bit. How far was Sirhan from Kennedy? And therefore, how far was the gun from Kennedy's head? So let's listen to a little bit of information that helps us understand that.
How far was Senator Robert Kennedy from Sirhan and yourself, Carl?
Kennedy was as far as I can reach my left hand here when I had his hand, and had his hand like this when I had his hand, you know. So it was quite away from Sirhan. And Sirhan was right in front of me, right in front of the steam table and between me.
In front?
In front, yeah. I had him right in front of me. I didn't let him pass me. I had my left foot on his knees, and I pushed him over. And
how far would the gun muzzle be from Senator Kennedy's head?
About a foot and a half, I would say, 2 feet.
Dr. Noguchi, were you able to determine how far the gun muzzle was from Senator Kennedy's head?
One gunshot wound was found behind the right ear, and there were abundance of a powder deposit on the edge of the right ear, and after test firing the similar weapon, we came to conclusion that the muzzle distance would be a 1 inch from the right ear edge and no more than 3 inches.
So I just wanted you guys to hear that so you don't have to take my word for it, because some of this stuff you do have to take my word for. But there's Noguchi in his own, in his own words. And right before that was Carl Euchre, who was the head maitre d' at the Ambassador Hotel and was actually escorting RFK through the pantry, trying to get him to his destination. So he was right there when all of this happened and actually was standing between RFK and Sirhan when Sirhan started firing. Now, Byron, perhaps the most interesting thing is that, as we've heard, these bullets came from behind. Sirhan was standing in front of RFK, and there actually is not a single witness who says that Sirhan was standing behind RFK. Okay.
Do we know how many people were back there?
I mean, quite a few. Yeah. So it was, think about like a Lollapalooza. Shoulder to shoulder. Okay, but you can, or Coachella, whatever. Like everybody's shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's tight.
So there are a lot of people in there, but RFK had just shook the hand of Juan Romero when Carl was trying to urge him along to keep moving, and Sirhan steps out of the crowd. So let's hear Juan Romero say a little bit as well.
Like Manasseh and busboy Juan Romero said the gun was 3 feet away, and New York Post writer Pete Hamill told the FBI he saw Sirhan standing in front of and to Senator Kennedy's left, about 7 or 8 feet, with his arm fully extended and his face in tremendous concentration, shooting a gun at Senator Kennedy.
The official explanation for the back-to-front wounds is that the testimony at the grand jury and trial placed the senator looking slightly to his left.
The accuracy of this police statement can be disputed, but for the sake of discussion, let us assume it is entirely correct.
This three-dimensional model now shows the position of Senator Kennedy as it is represented.
So here's what I want you to imagine, and I know some of you out there are probably great at spatial visualization, and some of you aren't. But
paint us a picture here?
Yeah. So Byron, if you're across from me, and
I am.
You're out and to my left. Okay. So let's pretend you're over there a little bit further. And I turn a little bit to this side. Okay. How in the fuck are you going to get a bullet into the back of my ear from 1 inch away and into the back of my armpit from 1 inch away?
The armpit's a little bit different, but
when there are people between you and me,
seems difficult. Yeah.
I mean,
is there anything Is there a way to overpack a bullet that would cause more?
I love that you asked this question because I asked my husband this question.
Because like the whole assumption of 3 inches based on that coroner's report, like.
But I know it's a little bit hard. The audio isn't great, but it wasn't just based on the coroner's report because he is not a ballistics expert, right?
Okay.
So he said, this is what I'm seeing. These are the powder burns. He had pictures of them. He took samples from them, right? And then they did test firing. It sounded kind of like he said testimony, but test firing to see with this weapon, how far away would you need to be at all of these different ranges to get the similar. And I asked Sam, I said, okay, let's say that it was this kind of a bullet. Was it, if it was a different kind of a bullet, could it have caused those kind of marks from further away? And I can't convince Sam of anything. Like literally, I was trying to get him to watch the UAP testimony with me this week. He's like, meh, whatever. Like I can't convince him of anything that seems logical.
Well,
he was like, no, there's absolutely no way.
I mean, it makes sense.
He said with that kind of a gun, absolutely no way.
I mean, the odds of it actually causing the same injury probably dramatically decrease the further it goes, exponentially.
Right, and just the angle that it was at, in addition, it's really difficult to understand how that's possible. And again, I'm not saying that Sirhan wasn't there and that Sirhan didn't fire bullets, okay? But we've got 4 bullets that went into RFK. That also indisputed, okay? Now, there's an argument that one of them actually crossed through RFK, like through his shoulder pad, and then struck someone else in the forehead, Paul Schrade.
Is he dead?
No, Paul Schrade, everybody else survived.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But that 4th bullet, potentially going into Paul Schrade, let's just say for argument's sake, Byron, that it did go into Paul Schrade. I think that the way that people were lined up and how tightly packed everybody was and the angle that things were going at, I think that that's incredibly unlikely. But let's just pretend for a second that it did. So now we're at 4 bullets, okay? We have 4 other shooting victims, and none of those bullets could have possibly been duplicates from bullets that were fired at Kennedy, just by virtue of where these people were, okay? And in fact, even the crazies who are trying to argue that there's no case here. Yeah, the crazies. And maybe we say the uninformed.
Did you just smirk at that picture of Paul Schrade up there?
Oh, no, Paul Schrade's great. Paul Schrade's a good guy.
He died 2 years ago.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. He was good friends with that Lisa Pease that hopefully we get to interview at some point.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. 4 other people hit, 4 hits to RFK, assuming one of those also hit Paul Schrade. Okay, so we're already a little bit of a magic bullet that we're going to just go ahead and say, fine, let's say it's a magic bullet. So Byron, there are also 2 ceiling panels that were removed as evidence because they had bullet holes in them.
Are you looking at me because you want me to trigger a video that we
Nope.
pulled here? Oh, okay.
Nope, not yet. Not yet.
Couldn't tell.
I'm looking at you because I'm like, this is one of my, oh my gosh, are you fucking serious? This
Sure.
is so ridiculous. Okay.
You think them removing panels is like an, oh my God, are you serious?
No. Them removing panels that have bullet holes makes perfect sense. Of
course.
But Byron, what was our bullet count?
I mean, we had a maximum of 8, but...
Well, we had a minimum of 8.
Well...
Because that's assuming that one of them was a magic bullet and went through RFK's shoulder and hit Paul Schrade in the face. Minimum of 8, possibly 9, but we're just going to say 8. So if there are 2 in the ceiling, where does that put us, Byron?
With a incorrect assumption that those holes are made by bullets?
We could certainly say that.
Yeah. Or that maybe someone else shot a gun into the ceiling maybe a week before that.
We could also try to say that if it weren't for the fact that there were 60 FBI officers in the vicinity called to the scene within 2 hours of the shooting. And their investigation yielded photographs that were sent by wire and entered into evidence saying that there were bullet holes in the ceiling, that they were fresh bullet holes.
How do you know?
I assume I don't personally know.
Yeah, I'm sure
being
there is
able
a
to
way.
know that.
It's possible that there's a way to know.
And in fact, that there were also 2 bullet holes in the frame of a door that actually had the bullets still in them.
Yeah, that would make sense.
So, and those you can see photos of where the bullet holes are circled, and the FBI notes indicate there was still a bullet in there. So, Byron, I think this would be a really good time. Let's hear a little bit about how the gun would have been fired. And this is kind of like the degrees of firing. It's hard to explain the visual without visual. So Byron actually was kind enough to pull together a visual for us to see of these fantastic looking paper dolls. And keep in mind, Sirhan does look very small in this picture because Sirhan is very small. He's a little guy.
Tall little guy. I mean,
he was going to be a jockey, remember?
That's right.
But not all witnesses agreed that the senator had already turned back and was facing in Sirhan's direction. Attorney Frank J. Burns testified that Kennedy was still shaking hands in the position shown here.
However, Mr. Burns concedes that he was not actually looking at the senator's head, nor could he see his hands at the exact moment of the shooting, nor did he ever see the gun any closer than 2 feet from Kennedy's head. 4. If the senator was looking in the direction of Romero and away from Sirhan, why then would he lift his right arm in the apparent attempt to protect his face from an assailant he cannot see? 5. The 2 armpit shots were fired at a very steep angle, respectively 67 and 59 degrees upward from the horizontal, as if Sirhan was firing from the floor. Since he was never observed in that position, the only other logical alternative permitting Sirhan to create those wounds from behind would be if the senator's body had started to slump forward, like this. Then he would have fallen on his stomach, but actually he fell backwards in an almost totally opposite direction.
Okay, now, obviously, this is totally hypothetical that that's the way it played out. But again, from a ballistics perspective, that is very possible, okay? There has not been any explanation of the possibility of them going at that angle when somebody is across from Kennedy and to his left, all right? So let's keep going with this a little bit. Byron, I believe, 18... You've got the next pieces on. This is where the bullet holes are in the ceiling. And the way that they line up are perfect based on the alignment and the positioning of people the way that we're discussing them.
The bullet which went through Kennedy's armpit and chest was never found in the ceiling where the police trajectory diagram shows it should be. This strongly suggests that the senator was not really in the position shown by the diagram. If we rotate the figurine representing the senator back to the position where he was...
How much would you pay for the doll?
A lot of money.
$2,000?
Yeah.
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 Observed by Carl Euchre, Juan Romero, and Pete Hamill at the time of the shooting, the chest shot and shoulder pad shot now traced to another part of the ceiling. This area is situated directly behind Sirhan's head and completely outside of his line of fire. As can be seen on this picture taken the day after the shooting, it so happens that 2 ceiling panels are missing from the same area. It so happens that none of the panels removed from the pantry ceiling were introduced as evidence during the trial. Why?
Okay, so very weird. They were removed as evidence. They weren't introduced in the trial. The door frame was removed as evidence. It wasn't introduced in the trial. I
wonder why that matters, though. I mean, there was clearly enough evidence to convict Sirhan.
But that's the problem. Based on what we're hearing here, Byron, there wasn't. Because the bullets did not enter from an angle that aligns with any physical or eyewitness evidence.
Well, when I say enough, I mean he is locked up in jail.
Right, our justice system is fucked.
Okay, but you see what I'm saying.
Right, and I'm saying that, perhaps as will be demonstrated even better by the lawsuit filed by the children of Malcolm X, the fact that somebody's locked up in jail doesn't mean jack shit in a lot of cases, unfortunately, because I don't think that our system functions nearly like it should. And especially looking through this, it's terrifying the way that this did function. And Byron, oh my gosh, we haven't even gotten to the stuff.
Say, I can't really make a judgment until we know exactly what the...
So right now we know that the bullets, according to eyewitness testimony, physical evidence, had to come from behind. Sirhan was in front.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have FBI agents who are saying, yeah, I definitely saw the bullet holes. So keep in mind, if there's nothing in the ceiling panel or the frames, that's the only way we could ever say it was just 8 bullets. That's the only, there would have to be no extra bullets anywhere because we have 5 additional victims and we have 4 bullets that went through Kennedy. So with one of those being the magic bullet, we could argue and say, okay, it was just one gun with 8 bullets. It didn't have to be 9. But as soon as there is a single bullet in the ceiling or a single bullet in the frames, we're beyond one gun.
Things get a little bit more complicated.
Well, it's like it becomes impossible that it was only Sirhan firing bullets.
Yeah.
And right now, the big thing, which in our court system should matter, it's really hard to believe that Sirhan fired the bullets that actually killed Kennedy. Because the position that he was in, it would make sense that they went into the other victims. It would make sense that they went into a door frame because of where eyewitnesses put him when he was firing.
And all we have is eyewitness, correct? Like,
well, eyewitness, physical.
Yeah, but what if Sirhan was actually on the other side? Or what if RFK was rotated?
All of the people, like the people that we're hearing right now, so we've got Juan Romero, who is the busboy that he was literally the last person he shook hands with as he got shot. We've got Carl Euchre, who was the one that was actually physically touching him and escorting him through, right? We've got Pete Hamill, who was standing immediately to his left. And we also have Schumer, a gentleman, Schulman, Tom Schulman, who was just behind Kennedy. And all of these people are all saying the same thing. That like there's a variation between
how are they
2 feet and 3 feet.
But also saying that Sirhan did it.
They aren't saying that Sirhan did it. So that's the whole point.
Okay.
All of these people say there's no fucking way he did it. That's exactly, that's the madness in all of this.
Okay.
They're saying, yeah, he had a gun. Yeah, he was firing a gun. No, he definitely didn't fucking hit Kennedy. There's no way that this went into, that is the bullet that went into Kennedy. Okay.
But it does make it more difficult if all of the same people who are saying something different happened all say the same thing, you know. When you can't.
What do you mean?
It's the same as like if all of these people who are saying that the evidence is pointing towards Sirhan, you know, if you have the same,
there aren't witnesses that say the evidence was pointing towards Sirhan.
There's no witnesses that say
the witnesses, all of them said Sirhan was firing.
Okay.
Like anybody who saw him. There is nobody whose witness testimony lines up with the entry or exit point of Robert F. Kennedy's bullet wounds.
And I would be jumping ahead for me to talk about what they did see, I would imagine, or who they think did do this. But I imagine we'll talk about that in a little bit.
We are. And most of those people have no fucking clue. They don't know what happened, right? And everybody saw little pieces of it because, again, it's like so crammed in. But none of that is giving way to Sirhan standing kitty corner and shoots him, and the bullet goes into the back of his head and kills him.
Sure.
Okay? And they go so far as to the people physically closest to him when he got shot, go so far as to like definitively say there is no way that Sirhan was standing at a place where he could hit Kennedy from behind.
Unless Kennedy turned around.
But Kennedy would have to turn around. But like
you see someone raise a gun towards you,
right,
your reaction would be.
But think about it. But listen to this. So like it's not just turn around slightly. It's like I have to be fully turned around. It's like a 270 degree turn.
I'm just saying that's not 270 degrees, but because if it was 270 degrees, you could just turn the other way and it would be faster.
Well, no, but I'm talking about where the bullet entry is versus Sirhan being across and to his left.
Yeah.
It would have to be 270 degrees.
Unless you turn the other way.
Right, but nobody's argued that. And even the people who said he slightly turned, nobody has even remotely said that he went that far. Like, literally, there are no witnesses that say that happened. There's not a single witness.
Okay.
So you would have to not only discard all of the witnesses' testimony, but you would have to say that what did happen, nobody saw.
Okay. I think we're going to have to move up past this.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, let's do, let's go to number 20, our evidence of revision clip.
Okay. Then
Because
what is
why would-
evidence of revision exactly?
It's an amazing documentary that I stumbled upon in this, and I feel kind of silly I didn't know about it before, but we'll talk a lot more about it in the future. Right now, suffice it to say, we've got some information here because one of the big questions is, okay, so the FBI agents saw the bullet holes in the frames. They saw the bullet holes in the ceiling. They have bullets that they saw in the frames themselves circled, evidence. So why didn't we just look at the frames if we were going to determine whether this happened or not?
That's a good point.
Of the door frames and the ceiling tiles. Well, this is not possible because as it was revealed in 1975, not only had the door frames and the ceiling tiles been removed by the police the night of the murder, they had been secretly destroyed in June of 1969.
On April 19th, 1988, the chief archivist for the California State Archives makes a stunning announcement.
Oh, wait, were you asking me to continue?
To dispose of physical evidence, the door jambs and ceiling tiles from the crime scene. Among missing photographic items are those relating directly to crime scene studies, ballistics examinations, and witness reenactments.
The official explanation offered was that these items were too large to be kept in a filing cabinet.
See?
Okay,
Thus,
yes,
in
but
one of the most
Byron?
important murder investigations in the nation's history, the Los Angeles police asked us to believe that a few pieces of wood and several ceiling tiles were too much trouble to store away.
Yep, and beyond like the anecdotal emotional of that statement, there was an active appeal underway. It was illegal. It was like literally a direct violation of supposedly the laws that our justice system is built on to destroy that evidence. Okay? So we aren't talking about like, oh, this wasn't necessarily best practices, but we're kind of in gray territory. Like, no, like very fucking hard line. You cannot destroy evidence with any active case or trial. You can't. It is illegal. And I promise you, LAPD has plenty of fucking storage space for 2 chunks of wood from a frame and 2 ceiling tiles. Like, the evidence that they store for all sorts of things is obviously far in excess of that. The idea that those things would be just too troublesome to keep.
I would say that the paper would probably add up to a larger, like,
right,
physical space. Than
right, but even, like, again, even if you don't want to say that they were doing this on purpose, they are a fucking embarrassment to the notion of a human justice system in this country. Like, that is an absolute black and white violation, like, over and over and over again. It's disgusting and it's terrifying. And the idea that this has stood, I mean, like, I don't care if Sirhan did do it. Like, literally to destroy evidence when, first of all, the trial just ended 6 months prior. An appeal is active. They destroyed 4,000 pages plus of evidence before the trial even started.
Yeah, but evidence is how do you determine what evidence is? Like, how do you determine what value of
okay,
evidence
so
is?
evidence,
And when does it become not
evidence that is removed from a crime scene on the evening that the murder.
Yeah, but some things aren't going to be of value.
Okay,
right?
Byron.
Yeah,
Byron.
Well, you just said it was blatantly disgusting, and
it is disgusting, Byron.
But you don't know what it.
Okay, there are all of the FBI evidence pieces showing this. These are bullet holes from a fucking assassination.
Sure.
Okay. So does that count as important evidence?
But do you? I mean,
how could you possibly? What?
You don't know because it was destroyed. You don't know for sure what evidentiary value it has. because it does.
I know that there are
exist.
photographs from FBI I know that there are photographs from FBI of those pieces circled saying bullet hole, bullet.
Sure.
Okay. So actually, yes, I do.
Okay.
And the idea that those could ever be considered unimportant evidence.
I don't know. I'm just saying, like,
I understand the devil's advocate, but sometimes, like, the devil's advocate, I feel like you're being blind to, like, there's an assassination.
Yep.
The people, the, like, highest level investigators there within an hour of the assassination identified these specific physical locations of bullets entering that evening. The physical pieces where those bullets entered were in
do we know
evidence.
if they were determined to be bullets from the same gun? Like, do we know that?
No.
Uh-huh.
No, but Byron, that's what you're getting at right there is the very crux of it. Because guess what? If there was a second fucking gun there,
yeah.
Which if any of those things were bullets, and so FBI agents circling holes.
But circling a hole, what do you mean? Why does circling a hole mean so much to you, though?
Well, when they identify them in evidence as these are bullet holes from this evening, there are bullets
from this evening?
Byron, it's the pantry of a really fucking expensive hotel.
Sure.
The idea that there are bullet holes that have bullets sitting in them that are from another event is fucking like Gumbying your brain. Literally. Like that's so
I refuse
less logical.
I refuse to blindly accept that evidence that may or may not actually be evidence is.
I wish that I could talk to everybody who is on the live stream right now just to get a weigh in on their thoughts on that idea.
Because we could start a poll. How's that?
Because
sound?
it honestly, it's making my head want to explode. So instead, what I'm going to do,
I could do a poll.
I would love to do a poll on whether I want to know who thinks that the pieces of ceiling and door frame recovered on the night of the assassination, identified by FBI agents as bullet holes, fresh bullet holes.
But what if they were determined to not be bullet holes?
Identified as they weren't identified not to be bullet holes because there would be a record of that then, Byron. There's no record of that. Okay, so identified to be fresh bullet holes. Fresh.
I can't type that much, so you have to tighten this up a bit.
Was it important to keep
the
pieces?
Ceiling panels? Yeah. Okay.
Are the ceiling panels and the pieces of the door frame taken from the assassination scene?
But
important evidence.
So here's my actual my question is here.
Okay.
Is there evidence that it was determined that they were not of evidentiary value?
No. Oh God, no.
Like there's no
there's not even an argument made by them. No.
But there's
nothing.
acknowledgement of these pieces of evidence.
Yes.
With no explanation about why they were.
We just didn't have room.
We didn't have
literally, we just didn't have room. Not these were determined to, which even if they said that would be insane, but no, definitely not. These were determined to be irrelevant to the trial. Also, before a trial even happens.
A lot of stuff is collected. Not all of it is useful.
The difference is I've actually been involved in multiple trials as a paralegal.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen. Like literally you go to jail for that as a lawyer.
Sure.
If you collect evidence and then destroy it, that's literally like
I guess
a federal offense.
My question is how do you define evidence?
If it's entered into evidence. Okay, I want to know, is anybody?
Someone said, how are you? One question for you guys. Do you do charity?
Okay, well, that's nice.
That's Cool Cat Paul. I don't know who that is. But either way, we should probably move beyond this.
Okay.
Do you see my
no
definitional
no evidence is entered into evidence.
Okay.
These were entered into evidence.
Sure.
So literally there's a process for something to be gets entered into evidence.
Sure.
It's evidence then. There's no debating. You can't say that it's not, or you can't say whether it's important or whether it's not important.
Cool.
So let's do
21.
I actually think this would be a good time for us to do 31.
Okay.
Which is the other evidence of revision clip.
Great.
On the night Bobby was assassinated, I was working in the Los Angeles office of the FBI. I was called about 2 or 2:30 in the morning, and I was told to report to the Ambassador Hotel.
Can you pause for 1 second? just for context, remember the shooting took place at 12:15 in the morning, roughly. Okay, so that's the time frame we're looking at. So this is within about 2 hours of the assassination.
Probably spent 15 or 20 minutes in the pantry area itself. I was walking around, looking at the various locations, trying in my own mind to reenact what took place. During this time, I happened to observe in a wood door frame, a center divider between two doors, 2 bullet holes. You could clearly see the base of a bullet in each one of those holes. They weren't that deeply embedded, and the wood that was around the holes was freshly broken away.
Bailey's description of the hotel pantry...
Just to pause for one more second. So the fact that that piece of wood from the door frame was removed, the only way it could be removed is if it was being taken as evidence. Mm-hmm. If it's taken as evidence, it's evidence. And if it has bullets and bullet holes in them, according to an FBI agent, and also according to multiple other, they show in this video some of the photos, and then if you go into other records, there are also multiple officers from LAPD who identified those as bullet holes, and then were told to shut the fuck up.
By who?
The investigators on the case. I mean, Houghton was the top chief detective on it, but all of the people that were under him as well.
Sure.
Keep playing.
Seemed to carry no special significance. He went to the scene of a shooting and saw bullet holes. Quite a few others had as well. In fact, photographs were taken of police officials and others pointing proudly to bullet holes in the walls and ceiling. But by the next day, it was known that 5 bullets had been recovered from the 5 wounded bystanders, and that Kennedy had been struck 3 times with another bullet passing through his suit jacket.
Mm-hmm.
The problem for the LAPD was that Sirhan's Ivor Johnson .22 caliber pistol held only 8 bullets. Thus, for only a single gun to be firing, there could be no extra bullet holes in the walls and ceiling. With some creative accounting using ricochets, the police managed to make the numbers work. But to do this, the holes in the wood by the doorway, which the night before had been trophies, now became non-entities.
I saw 2 bullet holes in a center divider. I saw 2 bullets in the holes. I know what I saw, and the issue, obviously, is that others say that they weren't there.
But to the chagrin of the LAPD, there was a great body of evidence pointing to the existence of these bullets. Statements from witnesses, statements from police officers, wire service photographs, and most damning of all, clearly labeled FBI photographs which surfaced in 1975, which included close-ups identifying bullet holes in the wood by the doorway. The LAPD, however, continues to claim that the witnesses were mistaken and the photos mislabeled, that the defects in the wood were only nail holes.
That's ridiculous. I was there. They were positively bullet holes. Anyone who is saying anything different either didn't see the holes the way I did, or they have some other agenda.
As far as extra bullets are concerned, why not settle the matter by a scientific examination
and this
of the
we've heard before because they had been destroyed, and that's why they couldn't. So
it actually brings up a point. It could be nail holes. Yeah.
Are you... Oh my God, I'm not even talking to you right now. I can't. I just can't. Okay, so we are going to... Oh my God. You've used nails. You understand what nail holes look like.
Yeah.
They don't look like that, Byron.
I don't know about that.
Okay. So if reason would suspect...
If it's important, I'll read it.
I just feel like I need AB here with me because I feel like...
If law enforcement collects it during an investigation until it's logged and the officer records it in a report, they can do anything they want with it.
It was logged and recorded.
Okay.
And entered into evidence.
The whole process works on the honesty and self-policing by the police.
That works so well, too.
Yeah.
And apparently the really scary thing, AB, is even when those steps are followed, it doesn't matter. You know, I thought that we had lost the thread of reality like in the last 8 years. Turns out maybe we lost it a long time before that because reality didn't matter in this. It was just, we're just going to burn everything and just say that was fine. And we're going to move forward and we're going to argue. We're just going to gaslight the fuck out of everybody who saw something directly contradicting that. And so if it would be really difficult to imagine Sirhan being able to get a gun into the armpit of RFK and at the back of RFK's ear with 1 to 3 inches between the muzzle and RFK's skin, then who the fuck shot him?
That's a good question.
And if there were more than 8 bullets, then who the fuck was shooting bullets beyond Sirhan?
Big long pause.
I was just making sure.
It's just being dramatic.
Yep. Well, kind of being dramatic, and also just making sure that we're all on this page. So,
I mean, that's a lot of assuming. But if we're going to go down your path, yeah.
Okay. Wait.
I don't think you've proven a point here. Like, you haven't definitively. So I will say.
Okay. Can I ask you this?
Yeah.
How could I prove that there were more than 8 bullets? How would I be able?
I don't know.
So saying that the recovered
witness testimony and burnt evidence is not going to do it for me, because while I do admit that it's suspicious, it is not definitive.
It's not witness testimony. It's also photographs, and it's FBI. FBI. No.
Nails.
Oh my God. FBI evidence.
I'm just saying we can't move forward on the assumption that I believe.
Okay, so let me just say that this
sorry.
in a court of law, for the way that evidence works, like this literally would absolutely. Testimony of FBI officers.
One
labeled. No, that's the one that there were 2 that were interviewed in this video, but there were dozens who went on record saying it.
This is. I recognize that you're trying to convince me.
No,
I'm
but
not
this is
ever going to be 100%.
I'm just saying, like, it is an ignore. You're ignoring the idea that, like, the simplest answer is the one that is probably real. Like, to say that all of those people who are experts, to say that the photos that were entered into evidence by the FBI of these pieces, and the only reason they didn't have the physical pieces,
by those experts that this was not.
No, it was determined by the FBI experts that they absolutely were bullet holes.
I don't know about that.
Oh my God! Yes, it was. Like, literally. You saw how much shit we have here. If you want me to literally go and get more shit, I will. But
hey,
determined to be.
Wait. What is the purpose of this report? Is it to convince me? Because that's not how this is going to work.
Okay, the purpose of this is for you to, at least as my investigative partner listening to this, understand that the burden of proof is nothing can ever be certain. The burden of proof is overwhelmingly on the side that there had to be more than 8 bullets. Like, to say that there were only 8 bullets, you have to literally disregard photograph evidence. You have to disregard not witness testimony, expert testimony. Very different thing. Very different thing between, like, a random you or me in the room and people who literally investigate crime scenes for a fucking living.
Sure. Still not definitive.
It would certainly, in a court of law, prove it. That is definitive.
Potentially. Because, they did go to court of law.
No, but that's the whole point. None of this was discussed in Sirhan's trial.
So let's move forward.
That's the entire point, is that none of this was even discussed in Sirhan's trial.
So moving forward, to prevent any of this, do not make grand exclamations of having provided evidence.
I have provided evidence. I have provided evidence that gives an overwhelming likelihood.
Suspicious, huh? Right? Like, you're not, it's not, you haven't proven anything, unfortunately.
All you need to prove is that there's more than 8 bullets, and it's
still
over.
We don't know.
It would be a lot of illogical dismissal of people and of photographic evidence in order to make that case. I suppose somebody still could. Let's talk about the order of people, because I think it's important that we eventually get to, if the bullets came from behind, who was standing behind RFK.
Is this a video you want me to
21.
play? All right,
Yep.
you got it.
Unpleasant as it is nevertheless reasonable to speculate that a contract killer could not find a more efficient and concealed position to do his deed. First, a clear opening to shoot at the heart, with little chance to be seen by witnesses situated either in front of or behind the victim. Then another opportunity for a concealed coup de grace in the back of the head as the victim slumps to the floor.
Okay, so that seems to make sense. Now, some of you may remember during RFK Jr., before he became the head of all of our health decisions in this country, was running for president.
He's eating some Nick Nuggets on an airplane today.
It's clearly it's the lunch of the most health conscious folk in this country.
Mm-hmm.
What's really despicable? Well, never mind. Okay. I don't know if you remember, but there was a bit of a kerfluffle about the fact that RFK Jr. could not get security during his campaign.
That's correct.
It was actually changed after his father's assassination that presidential candidates were able to get Secret Service protection in addition to elected officials or previous elected officials.
6 months ahead of the election.
Yep, and I think you have to have a certain percentage.
Yes. Yeah, you have to actually
he
be
wasn't
a
really a
candidate.
viable candidate, which is why it was a bit of a fight.
Yeah.
But all of that came to be from the case involving his father, which I feel like he probably should have gotten, like, okay, you're kind of grandfathered in because your dad got killed since we didn't have that.
Fathered
I think we can, good point, good point. I think we could probably go ahead and just get you some fucking security.
Yeah, why not?
You are a Kennedy, so the odds of you dying are officially 100,000 times greater than any other person.
Cursed guy.
Yeah. Now, what was RFK doing for security? So he had a couple of his friends present. Rosie Greer, who is, it's very funny, you can see a lot of articles where people are reporting on shit that they don't understand because they keep citing that Rosie was a she. Was not a she, was a giant ass football player.
Okay.
Really nice feller. Actually became a reverend in his later years. So he was there. I'm thinking next week we'll probably, in our closing, we'll get to a little bit of the testimony from him. And there was a former Olympic decathlete that was friends with RFK. And then there were also some security guards that had been hired by the Ambassador Hotel for this evening, essentially trying to avoid exactly what happened because it's in their interest to not have anything shitty happen. Okay. Yeah. Look at that Rosie Greer. Such a feminine looking guy.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. It's so funny when I read an article. She said,
come on.
Just read a couple things, folks. So we've got security guards that don't have anything to do with RFK and his team other than the Ambassador Hotel said, we need to have some people on site because there's likely to be big crowds. We don't want anything bad happening. Bad look for our amazing, beautiful, fancy hotel here. Now we get to talk about a security guard. You heard this fella's name last week.
Did you see any security guards in that kitchen pantry?
There was a security man somewhere behind me. I don't know how far away from me.
On what side?
I somewhere around... right on the left side, right behind Kennedy, somewhere around there.
I see. Well, that would be Thane Eugene Caesar, according to an official police diagram.
Okay, so Thane Eugene Caesar. This is a plumber and a fly-by-night security agent. There's some interesting things about him. Some ties to Howard Hughes, some ties to the CIA.
Some ties to the KKK.
Definitely. I'm actually going to go ahead and say, Byron, that I did not see any membership in, though based on the sound bites, I feel like he would be a highly recruitable member.
Yeah. There's no clear evidence of him.
No, though the mentality is definitely in alignment. It would be very on brand for this gentleman. Let's hear from him. So in 1969, when reporter Ted Chirac interviewed him, okay, let's hear what he has to say about being right behind Kennedy when all of this went down.
For some reason, I don't know why, I had a hold of his arm, under his elbow here.
Which arm?
Would be his right arm. And with my left hand, and I was pushing people with my right because there was a lot that was, I would say way over 100 people in the kitchen area. Who knows how many. And just as we reached the edge of the steam tables, the little Spanish busboy was standing there, and Bobby turned his
that's
head.
beautiful comparatively.
Romero.
Right.
He's
to
trying,
reach
at
over,
least.
and he started to shake hands with him. And when he did, that's when the shots were fired. And the thing I saw first wasn't so much the noise, but with the flash. I got powder in my eyes from the flash. And I was a little behind Bobby, so I would say I was about 3 feet from the flash, because I looked up and seen the red gun flash. And like I said, I got a little bit of powder in my eyes. When the shots were fired, when I reached for my gun, and this one I got knocked down.
Did you get your gun out of your holster?
Yeah, but it didn't do no good because I'm on the floor.
Oh, yeah.
But anyways, I got back up, and I had my gun out, but they already had him restrained.
Did you see other guys pull their guns after you pulled your gun that time?
After we went out through the swinging doors, yeah, there was 3 of us had our guns out.
What about in the kitchen?
No, I didn't see anybody else pull their guns in the kitchen area.
Except yourself?
Except for myself.
And you pulled it the instant you saw them?
When I seen the flashes and the gun go off, I pulled it, but I got knocked down.
How far did you have it out?
Oh, I had it out of my holster. I had it in my hand.
Want to hear something kind of fucked up, Kelly?
I don't know, maybe.
His opinion means more to me because that's the thing, unfortunately.
Why'd you say that out loud? Those are the things you keep in your fucking head.
No, but he's the one, because in my head, of course, I walked you through this a little bit, it wouldn't take much for RFK to have turned away from someone drawing a gun on him that would make sense for Sirhan to be shooting him in the back of the head and behind the arms. You know, the distance between him and RFK, that's something that could have been up for debate as well.
So now because the racist fuck says he was, you believe it?
Well, it's not because he's a racist fuck. It's because he claims to have held the arm and helped push him through the crowd. You know?
So did the maitre d'. Why are we trusting him more than the maitre d'? I mean, the maitre d' is not American, I know.
Don't you dare.
I mean, he does have a foreign accent.
Don't you dare do that.
Okay.
But
why are we trusting him? Is it because he's got that badge?
Well, because you also are claiming that he's potentially the one that did shoot him, right?
Well, I'm saying why before.
It's not because he has a wait. Don't.
Well, tell me why. Give me a why. Why is
because the positions that he's in, plus him being the potential suspect, like what he's saying makes a lot more sense than because if he was trying to claim that Sirhan did do it, right?
He is claiming that Sirhan did it.
Well,
unfortunately, his story doesn't match any of the evidence.
Exactly. So
because he's fucking dumb.
Yeah.
But. I mean, and we can get into that because of his opinions about people that are not even the right shade of white.
Sure. Either way, the positioning makes less sense based on where he's at.
Well,
yeah.
In case this would be helpful, I also think it's important because there is other verification of this fact. So first of all, it's important to hear that, yes, all of the testimony continues to align with the position of where Sirhan was and where Kennedy was, and continues to verify that there's no fucking way Sirhan's gun could have shot a bullet into the back of Kennedy's ear. But more importantly was the part of that where Caesar describes getting his gun out of his holster.
He did say that.
In the trial, it was actually entered into record that there were no other guns that were pulled by anyone in the pantry that evening. When in fact, not only does Caesar say his gun was pulled, but the other 2 security guards that he was there with, who had been hired by the Ambassador Hotel as well, that their guns were pulled. All 3 of them had their guns pulled.
Now, is that just like an error in recording, or does that matter?
You mean an error in recording on the part of the...
As in putting it
trial?
Putting it into evidence.
No, I mean, so this is the crux of whether Sirhan's guilty or not, because if Sirhan's bullet did not kill Kennedy, Sirhan's been sitting in jail under a wrongful conviction his entire life.
Well, Yeah, a wrongful conviction, which is attempted assassination versus assassination.
Yeah, the difference for
seems to
for
be
punishment is pretty significant for that one.
yeah, probably
real significant.
I don't know. We'll see how long that guy who tried to shoot Trump on the golf course is going to get.
I promise you, if he gets a long time, it's because of a change that Trump makes or mandates.
Sure.
Because, especially in the state of California, they have such a problem with overcrowding of jails. They have let people out for all sorts of things. They have let literal murders out many times over the period that Sirhan has been sitting in jail. And it's the high profile nature of this that has given him the sentence that it did.
Well, yeah. I mean, it should, if it's the target is the president of the...
Correct. But if his bullet didn't kill him...
Would be assassins 20 to life still.
Yeah. So he's served... I'm just trying to do fast math here, which doesn't work.
I'm just
for me.
saying it's possible that he would still be.
It isn't possible.
It is legally right here.
No, but what you need to understand is in the state of California, what the mandatory jail times are for not for the conviction, but for the actual time served based upon the overcrowding of the jails. He would not. Like, even if this had, like anybody else, it wouldn't have been, he still wouldn't be in there.
Sure.
If it had been attempted rather than an assassination, I promise you. If the gun that he fired wasn't, and the bullets that he fired didn't kill RFK, but somebody else did, A, that means that there's somebody out there that fucking killed RFK that hasn't faced any consequences for it. B, that means that there was likely some kind of a plot, right? Whether it involved like the government or not, or the mafia or not, or the LAPD or not, I don't fucking know, but there was more than one person. So the idea of whether another gun was pulled in that room becomes hugely important because A, it gets at why were there more than 8 bullets? It gets at all of these different things that are every single question that exists in this right now. There are plenty of other people who verify that the gun had been pulled, even though, again, in court, in the trial itself, absolutely not. And Byron, this is one of the things that I think is so strange. So Tom Schulman, live on CBS, we're going to listen to some of the words from that night, okay, night of the assassination. Let's go here.
Jerry Dunphy once again back at KNXT election headquarters. Don Schulman, one of our KNXT employees, witnessed the shooting that we've been telling you about. Kennedy was walking toward the kitchen. That was his route out of the ballroom. A man stepped out of a crowd and shot Kennedy. Kennedy's bodyguards fired back. The suspect now in custody at the Ambassador Hotel. Don Schulman of KNXT tells us that Kennedy was shot 3 times.
So Schulman had reported that to the people at CBS. He was actually, we've been going so long, I'm going to skip some of these, but he was actually interviewed then by another reporter, and in his own words on that night, like within 15 minutes of the shooting, again said, yes, there were other guns drawn. The security guard returned fire. Okay. That report was actually covered internationally. It ran in a newspaper in fucking Paris that he had witnessed a return of fire. But this is really, again, this is like, how do you explain this? A few years later, when this reinvestigation was happening, CBS said there was no record of Schulman ever saying that on the night of the assassination. And this is where these primary, like, broadcasts become so important. It's why I get so nerded out by, like, Evidence of Revision, the documentary that just has tons of clips from actual broadcasts, because that's the only way you verify this. CBS said, no, we went through all of our records. He did not say that. And it's not like they just said, no, we're pretty sure, we don't remember that. They said, we went through all of our archives of footage. He never said that, which was a lie.
They don't have a lot of archives. The fact that they had this is very lucky. The thing that you're about to play would.
Well, it isn't from CBS archives.
No, where's it from?
It's from somebody else that had recorded it, luckily. But no, CBS keep in mind, this was in 1973. We're not talking about in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
CBS said, yes, we went through all of our archives. We have those archives. He did
Do
not.
they have those archives though? Because
in 1973 they did. Of the 1968, yes, they did.
Sure, because it's not common.
Okay, well, let me at
a lot of it is
least say this. They said they did.
Yeah, which is interesting.
They said they did.
Yeah.
And they said they reviewed all of them. And they said that.
And I wasn't doubting that. I was just saying it's back then.
At this point,
there's a lot of odds of that being lost media. A lot of even mostly local broadcasts, but national broadcasts even.
Totally, I completely agree. It's just they literally said, no, we went through all of our archives. We have footage from that night archived.
Yeah.
He never said anything like that. And the only reason we know that that's not the case is because somebody else had recorded it. And then like this reporter from Paris said, wait a second, I heard that myself. I ran it in, that's how I wrote the article that I ran in our paper in Paris was based upon that testimony. He absolutely said that. Because what they were trying to say is this guy didn't even come up with that idea until years later. So very, very frustrating. I think that at the end of the day, what we all need to understand better than anything is there is tons of question surrounding this. So I would argue, statistically speaking, the odds of there being more than 8 bullets fired are far greater than 50%. I don't think, unless we have something, unless we're able...
Dog snore.
I know, it was so sweet though. If we can go back in time and, save the destruction of actual registered evidence, that'd be freaking lovely, but we can't. Beyond that, I don't know how much more certain I could be, but these pieces all add up to something fairly frightening to me personally in the way of the illusion of a functioning justice system. And one of the things that I have come to feel very strongly, both from my research of this incident and just, trying to be a little bit more aware and listen to things over the years, I think one of the reasons this is so infuriating to me is because I have had the privilege of existing most of my life with the assumption that the justice system is working, at least at some level, okay? There are a lot of people in our country who live a very different reality from that, and it doesn't surprise them for 1 second that it would go this fucked up because their experiences with the justice system have been 100% in line with everything that I've discussed tonight. Mm-hmm. So this would come as absolutely no surprise. For somebody who has been very sheltered and privileged and never on the negative end of this, it was absolutely shocking to me. And that's even as somebody, I'm pretty damn skeptical of police departments, like very skeptical. And this still was like, you are fucking kidding me. But reading a lot of people who have discussed this, like I said, the people in our country who have not had that same privilege, this is much less shocking to. And I think the idea that they could not rely on our justice system to protect them or their interests has been something known for years and years, whereas for me, this is a newer idea. Okay, so we've got the idea.
Were you going to play that clip from the night, the CBS footage that Schulman said? I don't know if you played that.
Yeah, no, I played the report of the guy talking about him. I've just got so much more to get to that I skipped over that because I really need to. And in fact, I'm a little bit bummed because I realized somehow my clip of the absurdly racist comments out of the words of Caesar are not showing up. I must have accidentally deleted them from my list of clips that I asked poor Byron to
add it to the list of
clip.
What we'll cover in Behind the
So
Screens.
you guys, next time you're going to be able to look forward to some really fantastic sound bites from Caesar. I'm going to just give you a quick summary so that we can kind of close the loop on that KKK comment. In the same interview with Chirac in 1969, when he's explaining that, yes, he did have a gun, and yes, he had it out of his holster. Okay. He talks about how he wouldn't have voted. He wasn't voting for Kennedy anyway. He certainly didn't vote for him on that day. And his brother had sold our country down the river. He goes on to talk about how his brother had given the country to the black man.
Oof. Yeah.
I remember that clip. Yeah, and says that it's only a matter of time before the white man fights back. And we'll listen to that whole lovely, lovely statement next time. But the gun that he pulled, said he pulled at least, and then later said he didn't pull when he testified in court. By the way, yes, his court testimony was directly conflicting the interview he gave to Chirac.
How did he change?
Oh, no, he didn't ever pull a gun from his holster.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it never came out, and nor did any of the other guards' guns.
Sure.
Okay. He also said, because Chirac was able to uncover this fact, that it was a .22 caliber pistol that Sirhan fired on that night.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Ted Chirac uncovered the fact that G. Willikers, Caesar owned a .22 caliber pistol as well. And Caesar had said, when Chirac interviewed him, that he sold it that he sold it earlier that year in 1968, before the shooting occurred. Well, because Chirac is a good journalist, he was able to actually contact the man who bought the gun, get the receipt for the purchase of the gun, and it in fact happened in the first week of September, almost exactly 3 months after the shooting of Robert F. Kennedy. And interestingly enough, beyond that, that gun just mysteriously was stolen from the man in the South. He was Missouri or Mississippi. I can't remember who bought it.
Yeah.
Really, really, really weird. Yeah, just a strange chain of events there. Okay? I think the fact that Caesar lied about when he sold his gun, I can't possibly tell you the reason that he lied, but it certainly seems to add to not only a trend of dishonesty, but a trend of dishonesty surrounding this specific incident, which, I think there should have at least been an explanation for.
Do you put any weight into the idea of him, like, being asked a question, did you pull your gun? Like, him responding in almost like a reflexive masculine response of being like, yeah, of course I pulled my gun out.
I would, if it weren't for the fact that there were multiple other witnesses on that night who said they saw him pull the gun.
They saw him do it. Okay.
Yeah. And that was what Schulman had seen and other people had seen. Again, we just don't have the time to go through every single one of those, but multiple people. If it was just him, I actually think that that's highly likely, especially given his personality.
Yeah.
But I also think given his personality, it's highly likely that he would have pulled the gun and not been using his gun in a safe way. So what I am arguing here, if Caesar shot him, I'm not convinced that it was necessarily like a hitman style scenario. You know that I don't think this is true, but the one-off idea with the JFK assassination that it was actually an accidental shot from a Secret Service agent.
Sure, yeah.
That actually killed him.
Which is the one I believe.
And I don't believe it just because of for a whole bunch of reasons, not worth going into right now. But in this case, I would not be surprised at all if that's in fact what happened.
You think he may try to pull his gun out when he saw someone else pull a gun?
He was a fucking fumble thumbs.
Yeah.
I mean, like the quotes, his racist asshole nature seems to permeate the way he lived his life, which would be totally in alignment with, I'm a fucking dude. I'm going to take this. I'm going to shoot this guy. I'm going to defend Kennedy, even though I don't know that he was smart enough to have been an assassin.
It's like a Coen Brothers film.
Right. I also think it is possible that he was an assassin because there are some pretty clear connections between he and the CIA.
Sure.
So I think that it is at least a distinct possibility that he fired the bullets that actually killed Kennedy. Okay?
Wow.
Now, looking at the fucking bullets should be able to get us an answer.
You would hope.
Of whether he killed him or not.
Uh-huh.
Now we get to talk about the ballistics expert from the LAPD.
I know we have a hard out in 5 minutes.
Jesus fucking shit. Okay. Oh.
What do you think? Is there a good pause spot and we can pick it up next week?
Yeah. Okay. So we are gonna, because this is really important.
You don't need to be so sad and scared about it.
I'm really sad about. Yeah, I can't even. Then I can't start.
Yeah.
The description of the bullets and what the problem is there.
We pick up on the ballistic evidence. We haven't even heard the auditory evidence from the shooting.
I know the number of shots fired in some audio evidence, which Byron and I are really trying with. It's just another piece of the puzzle. I don't think it's like the smoking gun, so to speak, but I do think it's another piece of the puzzle. And the smoking gun itself is a smoking gun, which we're going to talk about next week.
Yeah. Kelly, I do want to clarify a couple things.
You don't think that he's more trustworthy because he doesn't have an accent?
No, that's most certainly not at all what I said. I was
about
to be very nice to you.
Byron, you're anything in the world but racist. I don't think that at all.
Wow.
I don't think that at all.
I just want to put a point on it that when I was pushing back on things, it's not because I don't find the evidence compelling. Or
that's fair.
Yes, I'm just saying that none of it is definitive.
That's very fair. I have a very short fuse when it comes to logic right now because the whole world seems to not acknowledge things that are very clear, and it makes me furious. Like the fact that kids don't leave in the morning to go to school and come back with their genitals mutilated at school.
Kelly.
People believe that, and so I get really freaked out.
Litter boxes too.
Yes,
but thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Byron. Thank you, everybody.
Week.
Thank you, AB.
Stay scared.
You've been listening to an Audio Wool original, produced by Byron McKoy. Theme music is provided by Yawns. For more programs like this, visit audiowool.co.